The Pilot Custom Heritage 912 is a cigar-shaped fountain pen that's primarily made out of a highly polished black resin and trim that is rhodium and colored. At the time of recording this color scheme is the only option that's available in the United States. However, over the years, Pilot has released a few limited edition versions with other colors. The heritage in its name refers to the flat finials, which we'll take a look at in just a second, and the custom in its name refers to the wide variety of nib offerings. At the time of recording this, I count 15 on the US market. The bottom finial is flat, matching the top finial, and the top finial has a subtle step lining its perimeter. The top finial is separated from the cap with a single gold band. And then we have a bent metal clip, which is a fairly unique shape for Pilot. I would say this is kind of a sword-shaped clip, and it is springy and very functional. The cap has a gradual taper down to a two-piece cap band, which reads Custom Heritage 912 Pilot Japan. We then have a bit of exposed plastic followed by a step down to the barrel. And the cap comes off in one and about a half turns to reveal a fully exposed gold nib. There's scroll work on the outside, and in the middle it reads Pilot 14K585, denoting a 58.5% gold content, 10 for the size of the nib, and that's a unique size number to Pilot. And then at the bottom we have the tipping material size. I have this one in a soft fine medium, which is abbreviated SFM. And then on the bottom corner, we have a date code. And on the back, we have a gray colored plastic feed. The section starts with a flare up, and then it has a tapering portion to a metal band, followed by threads that are highly polished and very smooth to the touch. We then have a barrel that is fairly straight with a very subtle taper down to another band followed by the end finial. In the hand, the pen is fairly average in weight and extremely well balanced and very comfortable. And the cap posts deeply and securely. It does transfer the weight a little bit further back in the hand, but it maintains an excellent balance. In terms of size comparisons, here's the Pilot Custom Heritage 912, a typical Pilot G2 rollerball pen, and your standard Sharpie. Before we get into the disassembly of the Custom Heritage 912, I wanted to take a moment here to compare it with two other Pilot fountain pens. Up top, we have the Custom 823, which is a vacuum filling fountain pen, and down below, we have the Custom 74, which is another cartridge converter. We can see all three pens are roughly the same overall length. The 912 is slightly shorter than the 74, and the 74 is slightly shorter than the 823. The 912 is the only one with the rhodium trim, and the 74 and the 823 feature the Pilot style triangular clip that ends with a ball, whereas the 912 has that unique sword style clip. Let's take a look at these pens uncapped. All three caps screw to come off, and all three pens have fully exposed 14 karat gold nibs. The 74 has the smallest nib, being a number 5. The 912 has the medium-sized nib, being a number 10. And the 823 has the largest nib, being a number 15. All three pens then have very comparable sections that taper with a flare-up at the end. And let's take a look at these pens posted. All three caps post securely and deeply, and again, all three pens have fairly comparable lengths, with the 912 being slightly shorter than the 74, and the 74 slightly shorter than the 823. To disassemble the Custom Heritage 912, the cap unscrews. And if we take a look inside, we can see there is a cap liner that's down in there, but it's quite difficult to remove. So for cleaning purposes, I just recommend running this under warm water or maybe soaking it with a little bit of mild detergent. The barrel unscrews from the section. And there we can see the included Con 70 converter, which pulls right out. The Con 70 converter is pretty difficult to disassemble, so for cleaning purposes, I usually just run it under warm water or maybe use a blunt needle syringe to force water into it. To remove the nib and feed, they pull out of the section quite easily, and then those come apart. And towards the bottom of the feed, we can see that there is an O-ring. There's no real reason to remove that, so I would leave it in place. And at this point, the pen is fully disassembled. To reassemble, we'll start with the feed and the nib. Towards the back of the nib, we do have two ears which line up to recesses that are on the feed right there and there. And then that can be slid into the section in any orientation. There isn't a key or anything to position it in a specific way. The converter then pushes onto the back of the section, followed by the barrel, and lastly our cap. And now we're ready to ink up. Inking up the Pilot Custom Heritage 912, today I selected Roshizuku Asagao, which is a nice deep blue ink that Pilot makes. I'm gonna remove our caps and our barrel. Submerge the nib into the ink and press the button on the converter to draw up ink. That looks like a nice full fill. I'll go ahead and wipe off the excess ink. Cap up our bottle. Put our barrel back on. And our pen cap. And we're ready to write. Okay, writing with the Pilot Custom Heritage 912, cap unscrews, and I am going to post it. I found in long-term use with this pen that I prefer it posted. I think it adds some nice heft, and the weight distribution is just about right for my hand. And our nib today is a 14 karat gold soft fine medium, which is abbreviated SFM. And it is a beautifully tuned nib. It's soft, it's wet, it has a good amount of feedback that you can feel the page, but not so much that it feels scratchy. For me, I really like Pilot soft nibs. They provide a nice amount of cushion when you're writing, and they feel very premium. The fine for me, the soft fine, was a little bit scratchy, which is to be expected with thin nibs, and the soft medium was extraordinarily smooth and a joy to write with, but the width was just a little bit too thick for daily use. So this soft fine medium is a really nice Goldilocks size for me. Our ink is a Roshizuku Asagao. For flex, I'm going to turn the page. You can push out a bit of line variation. I wouldn't call this a flex nib, but it pushes out just enough that it gives you some nice character to your writing. And for reverse writing, very scratchy. I can feel it kind of tearing up the page. But the feed kept up pretty well. It maybe got a little bit washed out as I was crossing that T. But in general, I would not recommend this for reverse writing. I think that you should just go soft or heavy with this nib, and you get a pretty decent line variation. So what do I think of the Pilot Custom Heritage 912. I love many aspects of this pen. I think that the design is very mature and understated and a very appropriate pen for office use. For some reason, when I look at this pen, I feel like the cap is supposed to be a pull-off cap, but it actually is a turn to come off. That's not a negative, but just something to consider. And as I mentioned, it is an extremely comfortable pen in the hand, both unposted as well as posted. It's a very versatile pen regardless of what your writing preference is. And the nib is an absolute joy to write with. This has become probably my favorite size nib. So for other Pilot pens, I'm going to be hunting down a soft fine medium. And it's an extremely reliable writer. If I have this cap for a day, a week, or a month, it still writes first time every time. One other thing I didn't highlight, which is really a nice feature, is the fact that the inlet for the ink is at the top of the feed. So even when you're getting low on ink in your bottle, you can still get just about every last drop. So that's a really nice feature. I also really like the fact that it uses the Pilot Con 70 converter. I'm not a huge fan of Pilot converters in general, but this one is my favorite because it does hold the most amount of ink. In terms of areas to improve with this pen, I really don't have many. I think that it has a very excellent design and a beautiful build, a very reliable pen, and should be very durable as well. I think probably the only big area for improvement is the color offerings. At the time of recording this, the black with rhodium trim is the only offering that you can get in the United States, and that's kind of disappointing. While I really love this pen and the way that it writes and the way it feels in the hand, I don't find that I reach for it very often because it does just look kind of boring. But with all that being said, it is a great workhorse of a pen and a pen that's appropriate for office use. And you can get it in virtually any nib size that you want. So once you hone down what tipping material you prefer, you can have an amazing writing experience with this pen. And that just leaves me to say, thank you for watching.